Alright folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the incredible wild landscape of Scotland. And on this video we're away to document something that we've never seen before on the channel, and that's my favourite type of history. Things that we've never seen and places that we've never been. And I just thought I would do the intro here at this old railway bridge from the old disused railway here in Angus, Scotland. Today the temperature's literally like 5 degrees Celsius, so it's quite a chilly one. But the interesting thing that we've come to document today is actually an abandoned castle remains hidden in a forest here in Scotland. And I'm pretty sure it's within this forest over here at the other side of this field. And the name of the castle's actually Hynd Castle, or Hynd Castle. H-Y-N-D it's spelt. And actually there's not a lot of history written about this castle, but in the Angus area of Scotland and that, there was actually more than 100 castles. So it's cool on the channel like to go and document remains of these castles if there is anything left. And apparently within this forest here there's remains of a castle, and apparently it must have had like a moat around it at least twice, like on 2 different occasions it had 2 different moats within its history. So I'm just going now to walk up the perimeter of this field where the fence line is, over to the gathering trees. But I think they said that most of this mound here where the trees are planted was actually man-made. And it's just interesting ancient history of Scotland. These castle remains was likely built way back in the 1200s. Early history of civilization in the land here. So here we go folks, there was actually like a farmer and a truck just drove past, and I was thinking he'll be saying, "Where are you going in my field?" So I just gave him a second to drive past so I could enter the perimeter. But that's a bra fence there for crossing, because it's just, you can just step over it. Some of the places I go you have to pure climb incredible barbed wire and stuff like that. These fields have all been freshly ploughed, ready for this year's crop getting planted, which will probably be very soon in the next few weeks. That's how often I'm taking the opportunity to visit these places at this time of year, because it's actually accessible without damaging crops. Because I always come with the greatest respect to like landowners and farmers. Okay, and I'm just wanting to come and document a piece of forgotten Scottish history, British history here, just hidden within this wild landscape. And it's crazy that I can share this sort of thing with the world. Just think, this mound of trees here, every day of the week from potentially the 1200s till now, these stone structures have been built here, sitting, putting up with all the weather and wild conditions. And I hadn't even heard about this place until last week or whatever, so it's so cool to keep finding new places to document. It's cool to keep sharing different little stories of history. It's just mad to think what's hidden around every corner. Anyway, I'll update you once we get up to the top of here. See what's left of this ancient Scottish history, folks. So when I come to a place like this, I'm not even sure for 100% if this is actually the right gathering of trees that I'm even in. But I was guessing when I saw the mound in the land here, it matched the description of what I was told. Oh wow! This is it folks, we've found ancient history. This is absolutely incredible. It's so cool to document things which is so ancient. See, they were thinking that this was actually a man-made mound, but when the trees have tipped you can actually see what the mound's made of deep down. So you get an idea if those stones apparently were put there under the ground. Sometimes stuff like that can get revealed when the trees topple. The roots can expose some ancient history. And just check it out here. Wow, places like this are almost like so far gone. It's mad that history like this can just get hidden by nature, destroyed by the trees. As you can see, the trees are just sitting on top of it. An ancient structure like this just getting destroyed, almost forgotten. Again, this is what I mean when I say structures are hidden within a Scottish forest. Like, you don't get any more inaccessible than this. So let's take a look at this structure and see what remains of the ancient history in this area here, and think of the people which may have walked within this structure at a certain time. Places like this are just so far from the mainstream like history, and places when you get told about Scottish castles and even abandoned Scottish places. Again, there's none more ancient and forgotten than one like this. Wow, I'm always blown away when I see these places and just thinking about what went on at them at an ancient time. I'm wanting to see what else is here. There should be some decent stonework, I think, if I can make my way around. I think at most times, you can imagine what this is like in the summer when it's overgrown. You wouldn't even be able to walk here probably. It's so unfortunate that the trees here have fallen down on top of the structure. It's making it harder to even get near it. Wow, let's go inside the castle here. See what history remains within the foundations of this place. This is crazy, folks. I always promise the maddest of adventures on this channel, and this is no different. Wow, we're now standing within the history. Look how thick these walls have been here. Look, from that line there, the stonework leads right out. Ken, it must be like 10 foot thick, the walls. So you can see it's a small chamber in here overall, and it was probably quite tall. Imagine being within the castle tower structure. Wow, folks. So here we go, folks. I've whipped out the phone here and I'll give you a little bit of the history here that's written online about this place, because it's interesting often to piece the history together, and a little bit of information can often give you an idea of this place. It says the ruins of a small tower, 8.6 metres square, situated on a round top knoll which appears to be more natural than artificial. It is 4 metres high on the south and 6 metres on the north, where the slope is much steeper. So I would say the north's this general direction here, folks. The walls of the tower are 2.4 metres thick. So that's what I was saying there. They're thick walls, folks, here. You get an idea of that. It says it leaves a small internal compartment, only 3.6 metres square. The walls attain a maximum height of 2.5 metres internally and 3 metres externally. Breaks in the centres of the walls, except from the west, are indicative of narrow openings or windows or shot holes. So that'll be for shooting out with a longbow, or like the archers would be out defending this tower. Maybe if this was their castle hill here, if they were getting attacked, they would retreat to the tower, which was their defensive position on the hill. It says, but these features are too far destroyed to be identified. The opening on the west was probably the entrance. See, I'm standing at the west of the tower now here, folks, so if you get an idea, this was potentially the original entrance. The walls of the ruin are of coarse rubble and in crumbling condition. 4 metres east of the castle are foundations of a small rectangular enclosure measuring 6 by 5 metres. So we'll have to go and check that out. There's obviously another foundation just nearby here. The earth covered walls appear to be only 1 metre wide and are only 0.3 metres high. This structure is possibly much later than the castle and is not defensive in character. The old stone wall, probably an old field bank, 1 metre wide. Ruins of the knoll west of the ruin seem to have no strategic value. So there we go, that was visited 4th of June 1958. That piece there was written and documented about this site. So let's take a look around with my perspective of the area now and see what I think each building could have potentially been. I believe now, though, if they were able to tell there had been like arrow cutouts back in the day, There's no sign of that nowadays. It's just smashed and degraded so much. Just think when these stones were built in here and put in here. I think at a certain time, maybe in the 1800s, the structure's been cared for, because I see mortar in places. Sometimes in the 1800s they did things to try and maintain the history that was left behind. Wow, look at this, folks. This gives you an idea. Look how destroyed this is here. Wow. I can't even believe that. Look, it's fully been dug out by some sort of animal, maybe living under there. But plus years of that, like erosion, eating away at the stonework, chipping away at the stonework. And look at this here. You get an idea of how the castle looked. Well, the tower here. That is the real deal. This is a crazy Scottish castle hidden in the landscape, and I just can't believe the different stonework. Each time I visit a castle from like a different era, they've built it with the stone from a nearby quarry, but it's crazy the different techniques. Because look at the way these stones have been put in. That would have been a grand tower in its day, and it's so unfortunate that a lot of it's gone. Videos like this are saving the history and keeping it alive just by documenting it in the state it's in today. You get an idea of the masons and the people that put this in. Again, built before like recorded history was even a thing. That's how there's not a lot known about this. Like the Bulgaiv's castle that we found out about some of the history a few weeks ago, whereas this one, there's not a lot known. Yeah, I'll get a couple of photographs for this angle and then I'll get back to you. So check that out, folks. I love the colour of the moss as it starts to just live on these old abandoned ruins. It's an old skeleton of history here, hidden in the wild lands. It just blows my mind. Everything looks incredible with the green moss on it. Wow, the detail is just so special to see. Just imagine the people that built all these structures back in the early days. Some of the stones they've used, like that one under there, absolutely massive. It's been an incredible feat of like architecture in its original day, and it probably stood here proud on the hill until it just gradually got destroyed and degraded. It was maybe even blown up at a certain time in the old clan days of Scotland. Yeah, because an early bit in that article there online was saying that they thought it was an artificial hill, but later on, when the boy visited in 1958, he must have realised that it wasn't so much of an artificial hill. And when I see those stones under where the trees have toppled, I believe it looks just like a natural hill. It's the sort of stuff you would expect to find in the ground. Yeah, it said in the article as well that there was another structure nearby, so it's like, must be around here somewhere. Oh, I can see piles of hag in the field, so that shows they must be clearing this area out. They're maybe going to clear the trees off the structure to try and protect it. Wow, there is a cold wind coming in this end of the forest. Just imagine maybe the people that used to patrol this castle boundary, they maybe used some of the surrounding fields here as an agricultural area. They would be bringing the grain and stuff back up to the tower. I was just coming down here because it looks like there's been maybe like an ancient wall. I'm not so sure. With places like this, it's just a main agricultural hub right here. And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, we're in the Maniki area today, which is kind of like between, it's kind of like between Carnoustie and like the Brechin area. Wow. Seeing this from all like the different angles, the way the trees has grown up through it, it's just so cool. I wanted to take a look around here and then I'll go down to the bottom of the hill at the far side because I'm not seeing any more remains of that secondary building. But so many years has passed since the person was here in 1958 and they took charge of this place. Like, so much has changed because the years pass. The tree, like branches and stuff, just land and cover the ground. And probably if you dug down, there would be some decent wall there which has been protected from the leaves over the years. It's just crazy to think something like that, with that crazy story of history, can just be hidden in the forest here. Look, some of these big big stones here almost look like bits of the old castle. That's a massive, big flat stone. So it just shows before that tree grew, potentially there was stuff on the ground here which was easier to see. Or like parts of the castle was maybe destroyed. And like the article said, at 2 times as well, it's had a moat or water around it. Which is just crazy because like, it just shows you how much the ground's changed. But then this predates known history. Such a shame that stuff's covered up and I can't have a proper like walk round. I'm just having to kind of like weave between the trees. At least we were able to see the tower, so and document the story of this place. Hynd Castle, or Hynd Castle. There is a lot of rubble on the forest floor here. Oh, would this be the remains of something potentially here? It looks like that's nearly like the edge of a wall. And that would maybe tie into the big stone there. Not unless there has been like little buildings around the perimeter of it. I'll go around this side one more time before we head away, because I would hate to miss some of the history. Because in a few months there's no way of coming back to a place like this because it's just too overgrown. Yeah, look how much rubble's in the ground. Some of that rubble was maybe at one time parts of the castle structure, parts of the castle building. Yeah, so all these stones down here are just from the field. This is what you get at most Scottish fields here. All this will have been tipped over when they were clearing the lands for their agricultural use. No matter what you do, every year the stones keep coming back up to the surface. So often they're just dumped in heaps at the side of a field like this. And you can see it here. I believe it's the same thing again. Not unless there was other structures maybe there in the field and they've just been thrown over. Because they would have been so destroyed. The amount of years that passes since things like this were like constructed and built. It was maybe just even stones from an old dike line back in the day. Wow, look at the size of this stone here, folks. I'm thinking this must have been castle related. It's a big, massive, flat slab of stone. And it's sandstone, like a lot of the castles and big buildings around Scotland. But yeah, that's been so special to visit this site and just see what's here. I'm guessing some of these piles of rubble here must be remains of old buildings, or maybe even bits of the tower. And I'm guessing that the building that was documented in 1958 must be covered up now from the wild landscape and nature. And that's why it's cool to video this today, because maybe the stuff I've seen today will not be able to be seen in maybe like 10 years. Maybe if more of these trees fall down, the castle will also fall down. The story of the history will be gone. It'll just be another mound there in the forest. Yeah, look, there's just tons of these stones. I'm not sure if these castles were blown up at an ancient time in like a clan battle. So much will have gone on here. Wow, it's just incredible to keep sharing places like this with the world. Always try and walk around and just take in every corner of it and get a real idea of what we're dealing with. Leave no stone unturned. And then when I see this, it's just always worth it. It's amazing how peaceful some of these spots can be, whereas at one time it may have been the scene of terror and war. Nowadays all you hear is the birds. It's just sad to see often when the trees fall down like that and start to destroy these old buildings. Again, one day it'll just be another pile of rubble in a forest. That's why it's been cool today to come and video it and see what we've seen. Document another little corner of Scotland here. Today it was Maniki, and it was a bit of Maniki history that I had no idea about, like even a couple of weeks ago. And I love to keep finding fresh places and fresh abandoned castles like that. It's like never seen, not even known about. Maybe one day there'll be a historical story that would like tie in with a place like this. There could be things written about it in history that we don't even know that it was this castle they were speaking about. You can only imagine which clan it was that maybe built this area to defend their land. Maybe lived in the castle, which was built at an earlier time than that even. It's just so cool. It's always cool just to think of different theories and ideas as we explore. But one thing that's for sure with a place like this, it's of ancient origin. And it's been abandoned just for such a long time. I'm guessing it's probably been abandoned from a similar time to when like Bulgaiv's castle and that got abandoned. Anyway folks, let's head on back out of this mad, wild area. Once again, we'll just look at a couple of the stones because I was just blown away by the size of this one over here. Let's check this out. Wow. Yeah, you get an idea, because look at the size of that. It's been really well built and it's been properly square. And originally you can see it's been of dry stone construction. That's why they had them cut so square. Again, there was no mortar originally. I believe the mortar's been put in to try and save the structure, but even that was a very long time ago now. But with the original stones, it would have just been so well built. And the angle of all those big flat stones, that's what gave it its strength. Again, once the wall was 2.4 metres thick, again, it was such a strong, impenetrable structure for its time. Because obviously forces that was invading them, they wouldn't have had that, like, they didn't have modern, obviously, like battlefield equipment. They would have just had some mad, like, old-fashioned bow and arrows and, like, maybe, like, wooden things that they could, like, roll against the doors and bar it in. But when you're on a hill like this, it would be so hard to invade. And that's the reason these original defensive castles were built with strategy in mind. Strategic defensive positions from an ancient time, ancient military technology. Oh look, I've just noticed I can actually see the wall line here now in front of me. Look at this. These stones here are actually the ones which must be written about. In 1958 they could just see the top of those stones, but they were like a foot high or foot and a half high. Whereas now you can actually see it's level with the ground. And I've actually been places like some military buildings, they've been abandoned since like 1991. I've noticed that there's like more than a foot of like soily debris. And it seems to be within like 20 year, 30 year, a foot of ground can like build up around an abandoned structure from what I've seen. And it looks like if this is the old wall here, it's almost just hidden and gone forever under the foliage of the forest. You get an idea of the stones. It's more of those big flat sandstones. On the article they theorised that this was actually built later, this structure here. So it could have been somebody that had a little hut at one time made with the stones which had come from the castle. So many years pass with a thing like that, so it literally is just like people's theory often of the history. We know what went on at the ancient times of Scotland, and you just know a place like that had been a big part of it. Such a big tower. Yeah, I would say this, from seeing the ground here under the tree, I think this is a natural mound in the land here where they constructed their castle. But I'm not sure where they quarried the stone. I bet you they quarried the stone somewhere around here. There'll be a little quarry, probably also hidden in a wee forest. And that'll be where they probably brought the stone for this place. There must have been so much going on, and it'd be so interesting if you scraped away all the earth and all the trees. What would be underneath this hill? Then what other buildings or little tunnels, things like that would have been built. Anyway, let's head out of this mad forest wilderness here, out of this old architectural, whatever the word would be, folks. It's just mind-blowing to see structures like that. It's ancient archaeology, ancient architecture. There'll be so much buried there, it's just unreal. Wow, folks, let's step under here. But like I say, we've just got unlucky because I've managed to access down the side of this field. Once there's crops growing in here and stuff, in the summer the crops will be bushy, growing right over here. It'll be hard to even navigate to a place like that. So I love adventures like that, where you can just see a mound in the ground with some trees on it, and then it turns out it's got such a crazy old story of history to tell. And once again we've been able to bring it to you on this channel. A fresh area, a fresh story of history. And it's just incredible to keep seeing that sort of stuff. Just thinking when those stones were laid there, wonder if they were building it in a hurry, or if they were chilled out just building it. And wonder what sort of meals they were eating within there. What was even going on back then? You have to imagine this could have been just wild forest landscape originally. They maybe had a small area cleared for the agriculture they needed to keep the castle running. It was likely to have had a well and stuff around there as well for getting water. It's crazy to imagine also which weapons of war they must have been using back in those days. It must have been spears, riding on horseback, and longbows. I'm not sure if they had crossbows and things like that back in the day. It's just so long ago, it's just mad to imagine all that went on here. And at a certain time this would have been a terrifying war zone, because at a certain time that castle would have been under attack. And you can only imagine the sounds, maybe screams and shouts, the noise of the stone toppling or being destroyed. It was all here at a certain time. Whereas now it's just a wildlife sanctuary for those birds that I can hear tweeting. So a lot of my American viewers and stuff's got family connections and ancestors from back in the early days of Scottish history, and that's the sort of place they might have been staying in or working around back in the day. That's the sort of place they might have been invading or attacking way out here in the wild lands of Angus. And it's mad to think about those little bits of history as well as I explore and think about the sort of people that were there. It could have been anybody. So there we are, folks, we've made it around as far as this ancient steam railway bridge here in Scotland. You can imagine the steam train hurtling over our heads back in the day. Again, the whole of Scotland was connected from the old train networks and that, which is all gone now. Well, it's not all gone, there is still train lines and stuff, but all these little connecting train lines were taken out from town to town. See this here as well, folks, this is an interesting story. This is how they pick them up. They've got a caliper thing as they lift it, it hooks in there, and they can easily pick it up and lay it down. And I've seen this a lot on the railway stones. And I believe these bridges and stuff were built by the train. The train would bring the materials as far down as they needed on the line, And then even the winch and stuff was part of the train carriage. They would lower all the stones down. And that's how they've got that from the large caliper clamp. Right folks, that's me just about back at my car, so I'm going to end this one here. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with the next adventure, wherever I end up going.